Night fever, night fever, night. We know how to do it. We know how to duel it. In The Last Duel, directed by Ridley Scott. And that name should definitely sound familiar to anybody that's ever watched a movie in existence, because he's directed a copious amount of movies. Among them, Alien, Blade Runner, Legend, G.I. Jane, Hannibal, American Gangster, Prometheus, and various other movies. I actually retro-reviewed Legend recently. You can check that out after this one. So this was written by Nicole Holofcener. Boy, it took me a bit to remember that name, and I probably still screwed it up. Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. So it might as well be good medieval Will Hunting. And yes, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck are in this movie. Ben Affleck being pretty much just a douchey guy, so it's pretty accurate to most of his roles, and maybe how he actually is in real life. And Matt Damon is the big star in this. And apparently, according to, facts about this movie, couldn't actually grow that much facial hair, so they put a fake beard on him, but they couldn't find the right compound, and it gave him rashes, and he had to have ice packs on his face to reduce the rash between takes. But man, he's getting paid millions of dollars and getting to work with Ridley fucking Scott, so good for him. Also, this has Adam Driver. Yes, Kylo Ren, and boy, you could change it to another R word based on a couple scenes in this movie. There's going to be spoilers a little bit later on, and this movie did come out in theaters a couple months ago, and it's available on Amazon for I think I paid like $6 for it, so not bad. I mean, you get to rent, you get to watch a 2.5-hour movie where Ridley Scott is at the peak of his powers at times, and also this kind of reminded me a bit of Kingdom of Heaven and a few other, epic medieval movies where there's some great parts. The fight scenes are really good, there's some good acting, some really great cinematography, the time period as far as the costumes and everything, really well done. It's bleak, depressing, because it's in France, and France was bleak and depressing at this time, and this is a history piece that takes place over 3 chapters in multiple years, a bunch of time periods. Actually, it's only about 16 years, but it feels like it goes for about 60, because there are times where this movie is really good, and there are times where this movie is aggressively boring. Now, there are more good parts than there are bad parts, but as far as this movie not doing that well at the box office, I'm not necessarily shocked. Ridley Scott is a fucking terrific director. One of my top 10 directors of all time. Even with a movie like G.I. Jane, it wasn't very good. Didn't have Demi Moore saying, "Suck my dick," even though she's a woman, whatever. It is what it is. But hey, she got to say that line, so that makes the movie good. In this, you do have Jodie Comer, who actually was pretty terrific as the woman that basically is being pulled in about 50 different directions. Since it was 1370 to 1386, during this time period, women were not viewed well, shall we say. And since it's called The Last Duel, we start with The Last Duel that's going to be featured in the last scene between a couple of characters, and then we go to the beginning. And then when we come to the end, we stop, as the Mad Hatter once said. So we start in 1370, and we have the friendship between Sir Jean de Carouse, and I'm pretty certain I'm going to screw that up because I'm not very good with foreign names, played by Matt Damon, and Legui, Jacques Legui, who was Adam Driver. And I'm going to say right now, Adam Driver is the only one among the main 3, male actors that even attempted a fucking accent. Matt Damon, I think he tried in 2 scenes and then didn't give a shit. It's not that he wasn't, acting well, it's just, why even bother attempting? Just be Matt Damon! And Ben Affleck was basically just kind of coasting through this whole goddamn thing. Ben Affleck probably was the weakest of the 3 here. But then again, Ben Affleck at his best is really good. And then other times just seems to kind of be coasting. And then there's Daredevil Ben Affleck. They tried in that movie. Oh my god, did they try. It nearly killed the MCU before it even existed. So, yes, again, based on true events, so we don't know how much of this is actually historically accurate and how much of this is just Ridley Scott saying, guys, just do this shit and let's make it look good. This is by no means Gladiator, which I do own and I will retro-review at some point. They're doing a Gladiator sequel. I don't know why. I really don't, as much as I love Gladiator. But the basis of this movie is a friendship gets fractured because Marguerite, Jodie, accuses Legui of assault. That kind of assault. I'm not going to say the actual word. Please don't say it in the comments. And I'm going to say there are a few uncomfortable scenes in this movie that could trigger some people. There's also a lot of bloodshed and a lot of other stuff and some really good fights. Really good, war, peace, like battles and everything. Really, really good stuff. And as far as like how, you know, any of the stuff between those, it varies between pretty good acting and, okay, we've seen this before. Because we get chapter 1 that's from Jean's perspective. And then we get chapter 2 from Legui's perspective. You get chapter 3 from Marguerite's perspective. Now, Marguerite is probably the most troubling perspective because we get to see basically just how women, even when they're wronged, don't get treated right, like at all. And unfortunately, some 600 plus years later, some things have not changed. Probably should change that shit. Women are people too. I mean, you know, Peter, naked people that will, you know, pleasure you for a price. No, I'm kidding. In all seriousness, this kind of just proves that, like, some things, like, you know, are staying through history, or staying, you know, the same throughout history, and we can't rewrite it DuckTales, woohoo. So Jean and Legui go around to these various towns, and they do stuff for King Charles VI and Pierre the Lord with his shtick. And then we go now, and I'm trying to do Lagrange and failing miserably. I thought of doing that for the intro and then realized it would have sucked even more than what I did before. So in this, and spoilers are going to be coming up in a minute, we just get various things from their perspectives and everything. We find out that, like, Jean's not the best guy. He has honor, but he's also not the best husband to his wife. And Adam Driver's character is kind of an absolute fucking dick that gets, you know, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that's pretty much where that gets, you know, it doesn't really get skewered. It gets flat out, you know, exposed as him not being very nice. And Ben Affleck's just there being himself. And there are various other supporting characters and some good acting. The cast is, I don't want to necessarily say loaded. I did recognize some of the people, but I couldn't necessarily place them because they were throwing a bunch of characters in there, and there's a bunch of side characters and stuff and some side stories. And we get to see that not everything is black and white, red and green, and it was just a shade of gray, the biggest shade of gray you've ever seen. Yeah, it's the last Duel party, man. Okay, enough song references. In this, again, we do get some good epic stuff. We do also get some boring parts, and unfortunately, that's where the movie kind of falters. This is something you can watch at home. You didn't need to watch it in theater. I mean, I don't think it's out in theaters anyway, considering it's been 2.5 months, and I think more movies are going to be moving from theaters to streaming a lot quicker. So if you don't see them in the first 2 weeks, just wait. So yeah, this movie ultimately does have some positives and actually does deliver with The Last Duel. In fact, I would argue that is one of the best fight scenes they've done in a while. It reminded me a bit of like some of the stuff from Gladiator. This is where Ridley Scott's powers really came up. Unfortunately, you have to slog through some boring parts to get there. Stick with it, it gets better. But this is by no means A-grade material, so I will say that it is worth watching and worth renting. It's only a few bucks. I mean, obviously, do not, you know, pay $19.99 for it unless you have money to burn and you really just love Ridley Scott movies and love Ben Affleck coasting through and Matt Damon not even attempting an accent. Adam Driver actually was probably the best here. Jodie Comer, though, really did deliver a great performance, a conflicting performance, because she, you know, when something happens to you and nobody believes you, it's got to be fucking frustrating. So anyway, I am going to get into spoilers, so just so you know, spoilers are coming up here in a bit, but do watch it. It does have some good stuff. Anyway, spoilers. Okay, spoilers. All right, so we're into spoilers here. So, throughout all this chapter stuff, we get to see the friendship of Jean and Legui, and Jean's, you know, he respects Legui, and Legui respects him, and there is a friendship and a bond there, but unfortunately, Legui does realize that, well, he loves Marguerite, who is Jean's wife. And he married her basically to save his family and also help her family and stuff like that. And there's land deals that kind of get, you know, fucked up because Pierre is a lord and a dick. And the guy playing King Charles VI looks like he's about 14 years old. I don't know why that amused me. Seriously, he doesn't even look like he would be able to develop acne, yet he's the fucking king. And anytime he tried to deliver anything with, like, you know, not even epicness, but just like any like gravitas or whatever, like any like in, you know, authority. It was like, okay, kids, sit down, let the adults talk. But when the fight scenes happen, the war scenes, they're bloody, they're brutal. But what I want to talk about is about halfway through the movie where Legui lets his feelings for Marguerite be known and rapes her on a bed. I really shouldn't have said the word there, but fuck it. I really shouldn't have said the word there. I hope I'm not flagged. But yeah, there's that assault, and goddamn, it's brutal. It's brutal. there's obviously been worse scenes in movies like that, or in movies like this and everything, but it was very, very uncomfortable. And anybody that has been a victim, regardless of who you are, I mean, I feel for everybody. Nobody deserves to be taken advantage of like that. And from that, I'm like, okay, we can just, all right, we saw from his perspective, that was in chapter 2, and okay. And then we see from her perspective, and we see basically the same scene. It's a lot of recycled material. This movie could have been cut down by 30 minutes, and you wouldn't have missed shit. Like, you really wouldn't have. In fact, I think that might have helped the movie if they trimmed a few things, because I don't think that we would have lost any narrative or any perspective from the movie. And when we saw the scene twice, I'm like, okay, no. Gotta downgrade it there. I don't really like, there are certain things I don't like seeing, even though I know stuff happens and are trying to be historically accurate. And according to based on true events, you want to be as accurate as possible. I get it. But I'm like, okay, we're going to repeat the same scene now. Didn't need to see it a second time. And then we got to where we got some animal violence and stuff like that. And I know that happened. And I know I'm a bit weird like that. But I wasn't going to downgrade the movie based on the animal violence. But I'm like, no. We don't fucking need that shit. But repeating that same scene is kind of part of the reason why I like downgraded a bit. And also the aggressively boring parts. But once we get to the meat of the matter, the last duel for the title, it delivers. Adam Driver, Matt Damon, and I assume they're stuntmen, even though I think that, Adam Driver might have done a lot of his own stunts. Don't know about Matt Damon given his age, but there was a lot of really, really good stuff. Bloody brutal. There was a leg crack portion that really sounded bad. And Matt Damon ends up prevailing and parades his wife around like this and this. And it's a good thing that he won, because his wife accused, rightfully so, what Legui did. And had Matt Damon's character lost, she would have been burned. She would have been burned alive. Ouch. And she just recently had a kid that either was Jean's or possibly the product of, the demon seed of Legui. We'll never know. Bottom line is, she continued to raise her kid, and after he won the duel, they were living on the land and everything. A few years later, he died in a crusade, and she lived 30 years, on her land and stuff like that. So she lived to the ripe old age of probably about 50-something years old. Because people didn't usually live that long back then. And there's some other stuff with Jean's mom, who also had her own brush with assault, but brushed it off and everything because, women don't have rights. There was even a line at one point, and I mean, I gotta just, excuse me while I get my notes just really quickly, because this is one line that really pissed me off, and it was meant to. I'm not gonna say it again, cannot cause a pregnancy, it's just science. Wrong, you idiots. Wrong, you fucking idiots. So yeah, Women Don't Have Rights, the musical. That's basically what this was. I'm going to give it a B because it was well made and there were some good fight scenes. It was just aggressively boring at times, so I have to downgrade. And because of repeating that same scene, I'm sorry, it's like, if it bothers me, I can't overlook that. So yeah, a B. It is worth checking out, but be warned, there are scenes that could trigger some things if you have dealt with that in the past, and I hope you haven't. Anyway, agree, disagree what I said, like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritland. I'll see you soon.